Hi there, welcome to episode 184 of The Art of Business English, the podcast where we help people like you get the language skills you need for doing business in English. Now, the other day I was doing a class with one of my students who happens to work with professional football players, and he was talking about the contractual process, the hiring, the firing, and it became quite apparent that he was lacking some of the fundamental language for talking about employment contracts and just some of the basic stuff that when you employ someone or someone is fired, which basically means they lose their job, he was missing some of that vocabulary. So we did a massive brainstorming session and we generated some very useful vocabulary for financial contracts or employment contracts, which I've decided to share with you. So today we're going to be looking at 10 very common expressions that we can use when talking about employment contracts. And I'll probably be dealing with some more next week, so make sure you stay tuned as well for next week's episode. So let's look now at these 10 expressions for talking about employment contracts. So as you may know, contracts are everywhere these days. We've signed them all the time. And when you get hired, your company makes you offer a contract or employment contract. And in your job, you may also need to negotiate contracts with clients and suppliers at some point. Whether it's for personal or work purposes, it is important to learn contractual English. You'll not only be able to read and understand contracts better, but you'll also be in a much better position to negotiate them. So that's very important. And today we're going to look at some expressions specifically for employment contracts. So the first one is your employer. Now, your employer is the person or the firm who employs people. So your boss. But we use employer in general because maybe your boss is someone specific, whereas the employer could be the company. For example, this factory is the town's biggest employer by far. So the factory as a whole is the biggest employer. The next is the employee. And the employee is obviously the person who works for a firm or a company, and they get wages or a salary. An employee, be careful, it's spelled with double E at the end, employee. Okay, so an example is Annabelle has been a hardworking and responsible employee. Okay, so we extend that E at the end because it's double E. And when you're an employee, you will get a job offer. And a job offer is an opportunity or a service or an item that's presented to you to consider and think about. So, a job offer is like, would you like to work for us? Here are the conditions. And that's when you'd probably be required to sign a contract. So an example, wouldn't it be great if you got a job offer from a company you interviewed with last week? Another one is hire. So when you hire someone, it's basically to employ them or to take on personnel in a company. Personnel is staff, employees. So for example, we ought to hire a public relations consultant to help improve our image. So to hire is to bring on or employ. The opposite of hire is to dismiss or to fire someone. And that's when you remove someone from their job, especially because they have done something wrong. So you can fire them, you can sack them, or you can let them go. Let me give you an example. Salespeople may be dismissed for many reasons, the most common of which is poor performance. So if you're a salesperson, you're not selling enough, then you probably get let go. On the flip side, there can be unfair or wrongful dismissal. So unfair or wrongful dismissal. And this is a situation in which an employer orders someone to leave their job when in fact there is no good reason to do so. So if you are fired for no reason, then that could be considered unlawful or it's not fair. So an example would be, after winning an unfair dismissal case, he went on to become an employment lawyer. Okay. When you get fired, you'll probably receive a severance package. And a severance package is the pay and other advantages that an employee receives when their employment is ended by the management. So you should get a severance package if you're fired, especially if it's for no reason at all. So the employees were given details about severance packages so they would know the financial compensation they would receive if the plant closed. Plant meaning factory. Next one is redundancy, or to make redundant. And this is also not very nice if it happens to you. It's basically a situation in which someone loses their job because their employer does not need them or their job no longer exists. Some jobs disappear. A machine takes over the job and then you can get made redundant. For example, hundreds of workers were made redundant when the factory closed down. For example, when factories moved to other countries, you might be made redundant. Now, if you are made redundant, you'll probably receive a redundancy payment. And this is the amount of money received to compensate for being asked to leave because your job is no longer needed. So you'll receive some money. An example would be the worker will not become eligible for a redundancy payment until they have served 2 years with their employer. And let's bring it to the end of this episode. You can also have be reinstated, or reinstatement, the noun. And this basically is when you give someone back their job or make something exist again. Maybe you're reinstated because of unfair dismissal. So the union demanded the immediate reinstatement of all the workers who'd been sacked. Remember, to be sacked is to be fired or let go, to lose your job. These are 10 common expressions that we can use when talking about employers or employees, the hiring and the firing process. What's important is your understanding of redundancy. Remember, redundancy is when your job no longer exists, that the company doesn't need you. Unfair dismissal, it's when you are unfairly, in your opinion, fired or let go from your company, or the company breaks a contract. This can happen a lot to people, especially in the professional world, where company changes management and then they don't like the people there, so they decide to change everyone. It's not your fault, so you get a redundancy package, or you get a severance package, or some form of compensation. So those are some of the words that you can use to talk about the hiring and firing and compensation process. We're going to look at some more because we're going to go into more detail next week. So I'll see you all on that episode of The Art of Business English. But remember, if you do have any questions, let me know. And if you've got any ideas for future episodes, please let me know. I'm here to put together material and ideas for you. So feel free to drop me a message over at the SpeakPipe channel, or you can email me at aobe@theartofbusinessenglish.com, or you can post on social media, or basically drop a comment over at the blog. It'd be great to hear from you. More than happy to prepare material or content or an episode for you. So that's it from me, people. I'll see you all next week on another episode of The Art of Business English. Take care. Bye for now.